During Hollywood's golden age, the biggest stars often had the darkest secrets. On his deathbed, a star whose rugged good looks and commanding presence once lit up the silver screen makes a shocking statement. Victor Mature brought Samson to life and was a giant in both biblical epics and classic film noir. He spent his last days blind and cut off from the people who used to love him. But what hurt him the most wasn't the darkness closing in on his vision. It was something much worse that he'd been carrying around with him for decades. What could make a famous person in Hollywood suddenly tell a terrible secret after keeping it between them for so long? Was it the guilt that had been following him around since the beginning of his fame? Or maybe the strange family disaster he had hidden behind his fame and glamour? And why did his health get worse so quickly after he finally let go of his guilt? Victor Mature was born on January 29, 1913 in Louisville, Kentucky. Before he became the ruggedly good-looking star whose name would be on movie theater marquees all over America, he was just Victor John Mature. Victor was born to a Swiss father who ran a local knife business. His childhood was not filled with glitz and glamour, but with tough love and work. In real life, Samson's strong hands learned how to do what they were supposed to do by helping their dad in the shop and carefully cutting and cleaning blades. Few people would have thought that this son of immigrants would grow up to be one of Hollywood's most famous leading men. The first stop on his journey was a short time at the Kentucky Military Institute. It was at the Pasadena Playhouse in California that he found his real calling. At that point, Mature's natural charm started to be shaped into something the camera would find appealing. But Hollywood doesn't just let anyone in. Before his big break, Mature did a variety of weird jobs like selling refrigerators and plastering walls, but he always had bigger dreams than the small paychecks these jobs gave him. When producers finally paid attention to him, they saw what millions of fans would soon come to love. A future star whose presence alone would draw people in before he even spoke a word. 1940 was the year when things changed. As the ancient hero Thumac in the year 1 million BC, Mature jumped onto screens with a body that looked almost supernatural. Instantly, the man who used to sell refrigerators became a huge star overnight. The things that made Mature an instant hit were his muscular build, those chiseled features that looked like they were cut from stone, and his commanding screen presence. During the 1940s, he took advantage of this popularity by appearing in a string of hits at the box office. Not only did his impressive look shine through in movies like My Gal Sal, 7 Days Leave, and I Wake Up Screaming, but he also showed off his surprising range as an actor, able to handle both romance and drama with equal confidence. But Mature's most famous parts were in the biblical epics. As Samson in Cecil B. DeMille's Samson and Delilah, he played the famous strongman with such conviction that many people could not imagine him without the role. Because of how well the movie did, he became a Hollywood legend and went on to star in other historical plays, such as The Robe and Demetrius and The Gladiators. Mature went from being just a star to a symbol of masculine power and heroism that really hit home in America after World War II because of these movies. What made Mature's rise even more interesting was how self-aware he was. Mature was surprisingly humble about his skills, which was different from many stars who believed their own myths. He was known for avoiding praise by making fun of himself and saying he wasn't an actress and had 64 pictures to prove it. He didn't take himself too seriously, which made coworkers and fans like him more. It gave what could have been a one-dimensional matinee hero more depth. There was something even more unique about Mature that set him apart from many of his Hollywood peers. Something that showed what kind of person the man really was behind the heroic images. At the height of his fame, when most stars would be desperately trying to hold on to their hard-won fame, but define his legacy beyond the screen for all time, Vic Mature's heart was with his country, even though his face was selling out houses all over the U.S. During World War II, he did something that not many stars would have dared. He left the press when he was at the height of his fame to join the U.S. Coast Guard. This wasn't a publicity stunt that a company planned. It was a real act of patriotism from a man who put service ahead of fame. Oh, fame. Mature rose to the rank of chief bosun's mate by doing great work in the South Pacific. His fellow soldiers didn't see a movie star. They saw a committed Coast Guardsman who told them about the dangers and difficulties they were facing. There was no hero role for Mature here. It was just the two of them, without the cameras or the cheers. His service in the war showed the real man behind the image. He was a patriot who cared about his country more than his public persona or performance, and it came from his deepest values and deeds. After the war, when he went back to Hollywood, something had changed and grown up. He started acting again, but there was a new way he was going about getting famous and rich. He stopped being satisfied with just being hired as a worker. He started looking for more creative freedom and business possibilities in the field he had dominated. By the 1950s, this change had led him to start Ramana Productions with United Artists and Batjack Productions, co-producing. Cool. The second one was started by the famous John Wayne. In movies like China Doll, Mature made the switch from acting to producing. In this project, he played two parts, one in front of and one behind the camera. There was more to this change than just business sense. That was a sign that Mature wanted to take charge of his job and stop being just a hired body and face. He talked about big plans for future shows like Vaults of Heaven and The Incorrigibles. Frino. Even though not all of these projects would come together in the end, they showed how determined he was to make his own way. The Western theme was also a good fit for Mature's skills. In the United Artists movie, Escort West, he played the classic cowboy who has to deal with the moral problems of the country. He was a natural fit for the genre, because of his rough look and strong presence, which added to his versatility as an actor. Timbuktu, a French Foreign Legion adventure that took adult people to the dramatic landscapes of North Africa, was another important project from this time. Nutzor, under the direction of Jacques Toureur, he played a character who had to deal with the dangerous tasks of the Legion. This showed once again that he could do well in a variety of genres and settings. By the late 1950s, Mature had built a strong connection with director Irwin Allen, which led to his role in The Big Circus. He got to experience the colorful world of circus performers through this big project, which added to his already amazing range. Mature showed that he could convincingly play any part that producers came up with, from war hero to cowboy to circus performer. His filmography kept growing with roles in movies like The Bandit of Joby and Hannibal, the title role in the Italian Peplum movie, in which he played the famous Carthaginian general with his usual intensity. He worked with Orson Welles on The Tartars, which made his connection to historical epics even stronger. This type of movie had become a big part of his career. Even though Young was still having success and seemed to be able to do a lot of different things, something was changing. At age 46, he made a choice that shocked a lot of people in the business. He was going to stop playing. When asked about this choice later, he told me in his usual, honest way that it wasn't fun anymore. He said he was going to become a professional loafer because he was rich and maybe tired of the Hollywood machine. But Mature's personal dramas continued to play out even when he wasn't in front of the cameras. They showed a man whose depth went far beyond the roles he played on screen. Victor Mature had a persona that was larger than life, but underneath that was a man who was always looking for connection and friendship. His personal life was just as interesting and varied as his acting parts. He was married 5 times, which shows how he changed as he became famous and wealthy. His first marriage to Frances Charles was the start of his journey to find a balance between the expectations of fame and the need to be happy in his own life. Public records didn't have many details about this relationship, but it was his first attempt to balance his public image with his private happiness, which would be hard to do for years. Mature then married Martha Stevenson Kemp, who was already well known in the entertainment business because she had been married to famous big band leader Hal Kemp before. When Hal died in a car accident in 1940, Martha had her own close call with disaster. This may have given her a unique understanding of how fragile life is, despite the glamour of show business. Nevertheless, even the shared couldn't keep them together forever. His search for security continued when he married Dorothy Stanford Berry for the 3rd time. Dorothy wasn't a famous person, but she became a part of Victor's more complicated love life. Like his other relationships, this marriage showed how he was still looking for mental stability in the often lonely life of fame. His fourth marriage to Adrienne Erwick was another attempt for him to find real connection in his busy life. Even though it was only a short time, it was another step in Mature's long-term search for something real and permanent that goes beyond Hollywood. Not until his fifth and last marriage did Mature finally seem to find what he had been looking for all along. He married Loretta Sabina in 1974 when he was 61 years old. She would be by his side for the rest of his life. They were married for more than 20 years until Mature's death in 1999. This suggests that he had finally found the security and companionship that he had been looking for in 4 previous marriages. Victor and Loretta had a daughter named Victoria Mature. She would become an opera singer, like many of her family members who were artists. Victoria's job choice was similar to that of her mother, who was a trained opera singer. This created a beautiful continuity in the family's creative legacy that went beyond Victor's contributions to film. Mature had relationships with some of Hollywood's biggest and brightest stars outside of his marriages. He was engaged to actress Rita Hayworth for a short time before she married director Orson Welles. This short-lived romance with one of the era's most famous beauty queens showed that he was an adult in the eyes of Hollywood royalty. He was also engaged to Anne Shirley, an actor who was famous for roles in movies from the 1930s and 1940s. These high-profile relationships added another layer to Mature's complicated life story and made him look even more like one of Hollywood's most alluring main men, both on and off the screen. But as the years went by and Mature faded from public view, he would face problems much worse than the ups and downs of love. As his health got worse, a new kind of darkness would come into his life, one that would force him to face the truths he had been hiding for so long. Victor Mature, who used to be the picture of physical strength on screen, was in the middle of a much more personal and devastating fight than the ones he had played in movies as the year 2000 drew to a close. Mature was slowly losing his sight inside the walls of his Rancho Santa Fe home, away from the people who used to watch his every move. The diagnosis was age-related macular degeneration, a disease that slowly destroys center vision, leaving only the edges of the vision clear. For someone whose expressive eyes had charmed millions, going blind over time was a particularly cruel turn of events. Complications from undiagnosed diabetes made this situation worse, speeding up his vision loss and putting his overall health at risk. As the night fell around Mature, he pulled away from public life more and more. The actor who had commanded the big screen with his strong presence now moved slowly through his own home, relying on memory to get through rooms that got darker every day. What began as a normal look back at his career quickly went off in a new direction when Mature started to talk about things he had never talked about in public before, his voice shaking from age and emotion.